Hello everyone. So this is the last lecture on this chapter, moving charge and magnetism. So today we will see torque on a current carrying loop when it is in a magnetic field, then a current loop as a magnetic dipole, then we will see galvanometer and conversion of galvanometer into ammeter and voltmeter. So to understand or to derive the relation for torque on a current carrying loop, we consider this loop. Okay, the loop, current carrying loop that we are talking about here is this loop, PQRS loop. So now this PQRS loop is carrying current I. You see the current I is flowing in the anti-clockwise direction, right? So here for PQ branch it is flowing downward, and for RS branch it is flowing upward. So the applied magnetic field is from left to right. You can see these brown lines are the magnetic field lines from the north pole of the magnet to the south pole of the magnet. Okay. Now we have the direction of the magnetic field, which is thoroughly from left to right, B vector. Okay, and current direction is different for different branches. Okay. Now you have to apply Fleming's left-hand rule to find out force. So you see if magnetic field is along the right, okay, and current is below, represented by middle finger, this is represented by index finger, then F is pointing upward, represented by thumb. So you understand that F is acting perpendicularly upwards on this branch PQ. Similarly, if you apply Fleming's left-hand rule on this branch, here current is going upward. So here F2 is directed downwards. Okay. So if these two are clear, now this F3 and F4, at times it will be 0 and at times it will have some value. But the thing is that F3 and F4 are equal and opposite. They become equal and opposite, then they will cancel each other. Okay. So the length of this coil is L and the width of this coil is B. QR and SP is B. Okay. Now we have one thing called as area vector. N cap is the direction of this area. Okay, so if you have an area like this, right, and the magnetic field is along the right, then the direction of this area vector is above. Okay, that you write as n cap, or you can also represent it as A vector. Now n cap is, or A vector is perpendicular to B vector, but the plane of the area is parallel to B vector. That you have to understand. We can see a second situation. Say you consider the plane in this manner. Okay. Now the plane of the area, or plane of this area, is lying perpendicular to B, but n cap is lying parallel to B. So once you understand these two things properly, many things will be clear, like the other forms or the special cases of this relation, the relation that we derive, will be very clear. So these two things need to be understood well. Like when the plane is lying parallel to magnetic field, then area vector is perpendicular to magnetic field. When the plane is lying perpendicular to magnetic field, then the area vector is lying parallel to magnetic field. Okay, so I hope that part is clear. Now when current is being carried in the coil and you place it in a magnetic field, then a torque will act on this coil and tend to rotate this. Okay, because of this force. You see, these two forces are equal in magnitude. That we'll see. These two forces are equal in magnitude, but they are different in direction, and they are not acting along the same line of action. The line of action for this force F1 is this. The line of action for this force F2 is this. Okay, this direction is this and this direction is this. This is upward and this is downward. So as a result, wherever they are acting, they'll tend to flip this. They'll tend to flip this coil. Alright. So after some time, this coil, now the plane of the coil is parallel to B. Okay. Therefore n cap is perpendicular to B in this particular instant. But the very next moment, say they twist, and the next moment the shape will be like this. So if I just draw a line, say this SP or this RS, or sorry, this RQ or QR, then the very next moment the line SP will fall like this, S and P, And since B vector is along this way, n cap will be along this way, because n cap is supposed to be perpendicular to the plane of the coil. Therefore this angle is theta, and this diagram is this. Okay, so this is that SP side, SP has, now this SP, and this is the magnetic field, so it has twisted by angle theta. Okay, by angle theta, n cap, or you can say that n cap, which was previously perpendicular, now the present angle of n cap with B vector is theta. So this is the position, or this is the shape that you obtain. Now the coil will twist by certain angle. Now n cap is making angle theta with B vector. Force F1 is acting upward at this point P. Force F2 is acting downward at this point S. Now if I tell you what is the perpendicular distance between these two forces, so for that you have to extend these two lines, and you will say this is the perpendicular distance, which is B sin theta here. How B sin theta comes, we will see it, but this is the perpendicular distance. Now this length is what? This length is B. Okay, now this angle is theta. Now if this angle is theta, this angle will also be theta. Okay, how it comes, that I am leaving it on you, that is a class 10 stuff. Okay, so if this angle is theta, this is also theta. Now if this is theta and this is B, then this length will be B sin theta, and this length will be B cos theta. Okay, so I hope I have explained all the parts of this diagram, of these two diagrams. Now we can get into the mathematics if you have understood this. Now what is force on a current carrying conductor of length L? Force on a current carrying conductor of length is represented by F equal to I L cross B, that we have worked out in the previous lecture, right? So now since L and B, you see L and B are for these two faces, like PQ, for PQ and RS, L is always perpendicular to B. Okay, B is just going through in this manner, so L is always perpendicular. So therefore you can write down IL cross B as ILB sin 90, and that is ILB, or you can write down BIL. Okay, in the expression I have written BIL everywhere in the note. Now force on branch PQ, force on this branch PQ is BIL. Force on this branch RS is also BIL, but their directions are only opposite. So you can write down F1 equal to IL cross B equals to BIL. F2 is also IL cross B equals to BIL. The direction stuff already I explained you, that you'll understand the direction by using Fleming's left hand rule. Okay, so what you understand here is that F1 vector, magnitude of F1 vector is equal to F2 vector. Okay, they are of course different in direction, opposite in direction, but their magnitude is same. Therefore you can write them equal to F vector. We'll use it ahead. Now we already talked about that the two forces F3 and F4 will cancel out each other, right? Now therefore let's get into the definition of torque. How do you represent torque mathematically? Torque is equal to either force, right? Two equal and opposite forces acting along different line of action, they constitute a couple, right? Or you call that as a torque. So either force multiplied by perpendicular distance between the forces, which is B sin theta here, right? So either force, magnitude of either force. So since both the forces are equal, we can write down in this manner, multiplied by perpendicular distance, that is B sin theta. Now that will give you BIL, which is the value of F vector, into B sin theta. Now L into B is area of the coil. Therefore you can write down BIA sin theta. Yes, BIA sin theta. Now this is in, okay, BIA sin theta. Now this is in scalar form. or you can write down IAB sin theta. Okay, as we have written there in accordance with your PDF, I am saying IAB sin theta. Now in vector form, how do you write this? Now you see area, this is a vector, B is also a vector. So AB sin theta will be written as IA cross B. So this is the expression in vector form. Okay. Now when the coil has n number of turns, then you write down tau equals to Ni AB sin theta. Okay, in vector form you write down Ni A cross B. So this is your expression. All right. Now a special case number 1. If theta equal to 90, now theta equal to 90 means the plane of the loop will be parallel to B, as I told you this before. Okay, plane of the loop will be parallel to B, but n vector will be perpendicular to B. So in that case you will see that sin 90 is 1, therefore tau or torque will become maximum. If theta equal to 0 degree, right? So in that case the plane of the coil will be perpendicular to B, but n cap will be parallel to B. So therefore theta will be 0 in this case. There torque will be 0. Okay, so if this thing is clear, so we can put there tau equals to Ni AB sin 90 is 1, therefore this value is maximum. Theta equals to 0 degree, then tau equals to Ni AB sin 0 is 0. Here torque value is minimum. Okay. Now the other condition, like as theta was equal to 90 minus alpha, right? We can write down theta equal to 90 minus alpha there in this figure here, or you can say that 90 minus alpha is equal to theta. So if you see, or if you express the same relation which was NIAB sin theta, we can write this as NIAB sin 90 minus alpha. Now sin 90 minus alpha is cos alpha, therefore the expression can also be written as this. Make sure which angle you call as theta and alpha, that needs to be clear. Okay, so this is the other form of the same expression. So if torque is clear, we can move to the next topic, which is current loop as a magnetic dipole. So before understanding what is before understanding this like magnetic dipole moment stuff, what we'll be dealing with in this derivation or in this topic, let's understand what is magnetic dipole. Okay, so you have electric dipole also, you have magnetic dipole also. Electric dipole you will find this in chapter number 1, and magnetic dipole properly you will find this in chapter number 5, that is magnetism and matter, the next chapter. Okay, but since this dipole moment concept will come over here, we need to understand what is dipole very briefly. So two poles, by definition, two poles separated by a small distance is called a dipole. Now the pole can be magnetic. If they are magnetic, then say north pole and south pole, and the distance between from one pole to another, okay, this distance is called dipole length. We generally represent that by twice L or twice A. This is for calculation purpose only. This 2 is attached with that for convenience of calculation. We'll understand this later when we do the derivation for dipole, okay, or when we find the field due to a dipole. So the what you understand here is that the distance between pole to pole is called dipole length, and the distance between end to end of a bar magnet is called geometric length. All right. Now two poles separated by a small distance. So here the poles are south pole and north pole. They are separated by this small distance. You call this as dipole. Okay. So you have something called as magnetic dipole moment. You represent that with capital M. Now magnetic dipole moment in terms of magnetic pole strength is M into 2L. This you will get in the next chapter, where M is the pole strength, mind it. Here this north pole will have pole strength m, south pole will also have pole strength m. Now this relation we'll see in the next chapter. Okay. Now here, now that you understand dipole, right? So let's talk about electric dipole also. You have a positive charge, you have a negative charge, right? So these two poles are separated by a small distance. Again say twice L. Then this will also constitute a dipole. So you have electric dipole, you have magnetic dipole. Now, how current loop can behave as a magnetic dipole? You see, here the current is flowing in the anti-clockwise direction. So you apply right hand thumb rule that we learned towards the beginning of this chapter. So the direction of the current is shown by the fingers curling. Then the thumb is pointing towards the north. North is above the screen or above the page, and south is below the page. Now the north is written in such a manner that the direction of like this current direction and this north direction are similar. Okay, so that you can remember the direction properly. So the north is written in that manner. Now in the other diagram you can see the current is flowing in clockwise direction. Now here it was anti-clockwise in the first diagram, here it is clockwise direction. So when the current flows in the clockwise direction, you apply the right hand rule in this manner. The direction in which your finger curls is along the direction of the current, right? Then you see your thumb is pointing pointing into the page, right? So the north pole is behind the screen or below the screen, and south pole is above. So you write down south in such a manner that it shows you the direction of the current. Okay. Now that magnetic moment we talked about, right? So what is this magnetic moment actually? Magnetic moment tells you the strength of a dipole. Now since this current carrying coil is behaving as a dipole, it has one north pole, it has one south pole, right? Above the loop and below the loop. Okay, so this is behaving as a dipole. Now this strength of this magnetic dipole, or strength of a bar magnet also, like strength of this dipole, north and south, this is represented by magnetic dipole moment. Okay, so how do you measure this? In this situation, your magnetic dipole moment m vector is equal to current multiplied by area of the loop where the current is flowing. Okay, so the unit comes out to be, current unit is ampere and area unit is meter square. So SI unit is ampere meter square. So for n turns, this relation will become NIA. Okay, so the direction of m vector is from direction of dipole moment, magnetic dipole moment m vector is from south to north. This is very, very important. You need to remember this. Okay, we'll come across this again in the next chapter. So in terms of, now you see, now that you understand the relation for magnetic dipole moment, in terms of magnetic dipole moment, we can write down the relation for the torque, which was NIAB sin theta previously, right? This NIA thing, we can write down as M. So it becomes MB sin theta. Now MB can be written as M cross B. In vector form, this can be written as this way. This is the scalar relation, this is the vector relation. Okay, so this is your relation for torque in terms of magnetic dipole moment. And the above, here we have seen that a current carrying loop can also behave as a magnetic dipole. So we apply the understanding of torque in a moving coil galvanometer. So in the expression of torque, we understood one thing, that whenever a coil carries a current and the coil is in a magnetic field, a torque will act on the coil, which will tend to rotate the coil. So galvanometer, what is the function of a galvanometer? To detect the presence of current. Okay, to detect the presence of current in a circuit, you use a galvanometer. This is the same diagram seen from two different view, you can say two different angle. So this is the side view and this is the top view. This is a rectangular coil as we have seen previously. Length L, breadth B, this is length L. Now here you have a mirror. Okay, so mirror is not significant in our derivation, but the use of mirror is that a light continuously falls on this mirror and the reflected light falls on a screen. Now if there is a slight deflection in the light falling on the screen, then you understand that the galvanometer has detected some current. Now a spring is attached to this. This spring is shown in this manner here. This is spiral thing. Spring will ensure that the galvanometer pointer restores to the normal position. So the galvanometer, a normal galvanometer will point in this manner. It will go either right or left, okay, when current passes through it. Now these are the two magnets. This is a radial magnetic field. In a radial magnetic field, the direction of area vector for this coil, the direction of area vector and the direction of magnetic field is always perpendicular. Okay, the area vector and the direction of the magnetic field is always perpendicular. Now when current passes through the coil, what will happen? The coil will experience a deflecting torque, which is given by NIAB sin 90, right? Sin theta, which is sin 90, so it becomes NIAB. Okay. Now restoration torque due to the spring will be given by, now this spring will provide the restoration torque when the coil deflects due to the current passing. So that will be given by K phi, where K is a material constant. It is the constant of the spring. So K is actually restoration torque per unit twist and phi is the deflection. Okay. So for equilibrium condition, right, under equilibrium condition, these two, like forward torque or the torque and the counter torque, will be equal. Therefore you can write down NIAB equal to K phi is what you can write down. So I equal to K phi divided by NAB. That is your equation number 1. Here you have three constants. This K is your spring constant, material constant, N is number of turns, which is also fixed in the coil. Area of the coil is fixed. And magnetic field is also constant, uniform magnetic field. So you can write down this K by NAB as G, and G is called as galvanometer constant. So we can write down I is proportional to phi. We can write down I is proportional to phi. So it says that greater is the deflection, greater is the amount of current passing through the galvanometer. Now we have certain things as sensitivity of a galvanometer. So first we come to current sensitivity. So you have to do one thing regarding this galvanometer, the construction and working. Okay, the things that we have discussed here, that has to be written, that you need to take the help of your book. Okay, because I am doing the mathematics only. So the definitions also regarding the current sensitivity definition and voltage sensitivity definition, you write this from your book. So current sensitivity, we denote it with IS, which is phi by I. So it is the deflection produced per unit current in the coil. Okay, so phi value or phi by I value from the galvanometer constant, you can check it. Not galvanometer constant, from this relation, equation number 1. Phi by I will be NAB by K, right? So you can write down phi by I equal to NAB by K. So that is your relation for IS. Next, voltage sensitivity. So voltage sensitivity Vs equal to phi by V. So this is the deflection produced per unit voltage, per unit change in voltage or per unit change in potential difference. So from Ohm's law you can write down V equal to IR, where R is the resistance of the coil. Therefore phi by I, again phi by I is NAB by K. So your relation becomes NAB by KR. This is your formula for voltage sensitivity. So you have to remember that galvanometer is used to detect electric current, ammeter is used to measure electric current, voltmeter is used to measure potential difference. Okay. Next, how do you convert a galvanometer to ammeter? Now a good emitter is one which stops less amount of current. It allows more current to pass through it. Now the more current passes through an emitter, the lesser will be the resistance. Okay, because less is the resistance, more will be the current passing through. Now since galvanometer has some amount of resistance, you need to reduce this resistance. Okay, so to connect resistance, what you do is that you connect a low resistance which you call a shunt. You connect this low resistance shunt in parallel with the galvanometer. Okay, so in parallel connection, you know one thing, that voltage across the resistances remains same, right? Voltage across G and S will be same. Now say the galvanometer was this previously. It was allowing Ig current to pass through it. Now you are connecting this shunt, and when I current is passing through the emitter, then Ig is passing through galvanometer, then I minus Ig will pass through shunt. Clear? Therefore, you can write down voltage across galvanometer is Ig into G, and that is equal to I minus Ig into S, that is for the shunt resistance. Yes, the voltage across the shunt resistance. Therefore, S equal to IgG divided by I minus Ig. Okay, so this is your relation for shunt resistance. You need to remember it. Now, effective resistance. So, since these are parallel connection, 1 by R effective equal to 1 by G plus 1 by S. So, effective resistance will be equal to GS divided by G plus S. Now, as G is much greater than shunt, therefore R effective will be GS divided by G. You can neglect S, right? And that is equal to S only. So effective resistance is shunt, or the value of shunt resistance. Now I hope you know this thing. Still I would like to talk about this once. In a parallel connection, okay, say you have three resistances in parallel. Say one of the resistance is 1000, one is 100, and the other one is 1 ohm only. Now in a parallel connection, the equivalent resistance or the effective resistance that we talked about, okay, the effective resistance is always lesser than the least value. So it will be less than 1 ohm. Okay, and therefore the lesser you put this shunt resistance, the value of the overall resistance or the effective resistance will fall even lesser than the shunt. So that needs to be remembered here. So if this is understood, now resistance of ideal emitter is what? Resistance of ideal emitter is 0. R should be 0 for ideal emitter. Now there is like you cannot have a material where resistance is 0, okay, and therefore this is ideal. Ideal is impractical situation. This is a perfect situation. Okay, so that is resistance for ideal emitter is 0. Next point is emitter is always connected in series in the circuit. So that is second point you need to remember. Connected emitter is always connected in series. So we have galvanometer to voltmeter conversion next. So voltmeter, whenever you want to measure the potential difference, you have to stop as much as current as you can. Now you can stop maximum amount of current only when you have very high resistance for the setup, right? Therefore you connect very high resistance in series with G, with the galvanometer resistance. Now you know one thing, I hope you know this, that in a series connection, the equivalent resistance is higher than the highest resistance. Say this is 100, this is 5, this is 2, then equivalent is 107, which is higher than the highest, which is 100 here. Okay, and therefore the overall resistance for this voltmeter will be very high. Now the voltage that you want to measure across this setup is V equal to Ig into R plus G, because the two resistances are connected in series. Now you need the value of R here. So R plus G is equal to V by Ig, and R equals to V by Ig minus G. So this is your value for the high resistance that you will connect. So effective resistance in a voltmeter is R plus G. Okay, and this has to be very high. So again, ideal voltmeter will have infinite resistance. R will be equal to infinity. In practical situation, ideal situation, for ideal voltmeter, and always know that voltmeter is connected in parallel, okay, across the circuit where you want to measure the potential difference. Voltmeter is always connected in parallel. So this is what we have in the lecture. We'll see the questions, okay, the exercise questions in the next class. In case you have any doubt,